So I'd like to welcome to the front John, Rhind and Annette, James and Anne Heigham, and they're representing therapists, and there is a big education that needs to be done because there is such a lot that we can do. We're almost preaching to the converted here, I know, but this is being filmed so that we can get the message out there, because I think some of you were probably a bit wowed with what you've already heard about the what can help with lymphedema, and we're going to have some more now. No pressure. So I'll leave it with you, three capable.
Okay, we're just going to introduce ourselves first, and then we'll each have a section on the various therapies that we are championing. So I'm John Rhind. I learned with Jackie on her first course of reflexology 15 years ago, or something like that.
2005.
Yeah. And I have been on a journey in my lifetime. I was an army officer at one end of the spectrum. I'm now a therapist at the other end of the spectrum. So I've seen all colours in between, if you like. So I absolutely love reflexology. I specialise in fertility, pregnancy, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute, and also reflexology lymph drainage, which is absolutely fantastic. I can report similar results. So I'll leave it at that. Annette.
Right. My name's Annette James. I'm a complementary therapist with 25 years experience. I started very young, and I specialise in massage. I'm qualified in aromatherapy and lymphatic drainage massage and various other types. And I used to teach for Jackie a long time ago. So nowadays I live in Wymondham. I've just retired and closed down my own business, but I'm still volunteering at Star Throwers in Wymondham, which is a cancer support charity for cancer patients and their carers. And Star Throwers very kindly paid for me to learn cancer for aromatherapy for cancer care. So I have a specialist diploma in that, and lymphatic drainage massage, which is really useful for reducing swelling, especially, for example, where armpit lymph nodes are being removed as part of cancer surgery. Women often get very swollen arms as a result, and lymphatic drainage massage can help with that. So that's me for the moment, and I'll pass you on to Anne.
So my name is Anne Heigham. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. Anyone heard of Ayurveda? Please.
Yes.
Oh wow! So I've been a full-time practitioner for 11 years. I run a full-time practice here in Norwich, and have moved a bit around the country and had clinics in various different places. For those of you who have never heard of Ayurveda, it's a very, very old science. It predates Chinese medicine. It can kind of be known as the sister science of yoga. And it's a very, very holistic way of looking at the body. So clients will come with a huge range of different conditions, and I use things like diet, herbs, lifestyle, yoga, meditation, all manner of different things. But the thing that really is unique about Ayurveda is what we're looking at is the person really as a whole. And we're trying to understand, take a full history, look at things like their tongue and their skin and their pulse, and try and understand what is the root cause for this person, where is the root cause of their illness really coming from. And then we try to bring the body back into balance. So it might be through traumatic experiences that they've ended up turning almost into a different person, or it could be just that their lifestyle and their diet has kind of got out of control, and they just need some help in bringing them back. I'm really lucky in as much that when people come through the door, they've already engaged in wanting to be healed, in wanting to take that step for themselves, and I think that's a really critical part when we're considering complementary therapy and when we're considering integration, this active step of of taking control is really important, and that was really interesting, amazing to hear Norman Lamb speaking about it from a commissioning kind of aspect, because it's true, when people have some active vested interest in their health, the difference is profound. They're kind of already on their way to being much better right from that point.
I'll just ask, can you see everybody, yeah?
I just want to go right back to basics now. And to quote Dr. Chatterjee, who probably most of you have heard of, stress creates inflation, which creates disease. Now, what is happening at the moment with our health services is that the disease is being dealt with, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and the problem is burgeoning. And they're snipping bits off and they're sticking plaster on at this end, but no one is actually looking at the root cause of the problem. And that's where we as therapists come in, because we can offer time where the health service is limited in time. I mean, I know you have sort of 5-6 minutes per client, you know. My clients get an hour and a half of my time, you know, so I really get to know them. I get to the root problem. And reflexology is all about balancing the whole body and getting all the organs and the systems working smoothly and correctly in a state of homeostasis. So all my clients, at the end of a treatment, they float out of the room. And they love it. And I'm sure all reflexologists can report that. On the fertility side, I was pushed down that line when I was training with Jackie. I sort of identified a strange change in the feet of my brother's wife when she was one of my case studies. And on treatment 4, suddenly things changed, and I wrote down on my list the point that I was finding was the uterus reflex point, and I wrote down on my notes pregnant question mark, and I came dashing in the next class and I said, I think I've got it. And Jackie, being the astute teacher, said, well, you know, it could be, but it might not be, and you never know, don't. Yeah, you know, quite right too, because I was like this. And anyway, about 6 weeks later, my son rang up one day and said, can we come for tea? You know, in he walks, you know. And I said, give me news. Give me evidence. Give me news, not history. That's right. And I had actually identified this pregnancy in my daughter-in-law's feet. Turned out to be my first grandchild, but that was in week 3 of her cycle. That was before she even knew it herself. And I've done that many, many times since. My success rate in fertility is about 70%, 70% conception. Now, that is fairly common for people who are actually trained in fertility reflexology. So there's that one. Another anecdote, very quick one. I had a few months ago a lady with Parkinson's, and she came into the house dragging her left foot behind her, sort of almost paralysed down her left side. An hour and a half later, it had just started to rain, and she ran down the path to her car. Yes! It is fantastic what we can do. And, I mean, it's a bit ironic, really, that we are standing here as therapists, and I'm going to be a bit controversial now, but how long has the NHS been in business? 70 years? And yet, I mean, I know reflexology is 2,000 years before Christ. It started, and yet we are having to justify our existence. but we are in that position, so we have to do it. And unfortunately, all the funding for drugs and things like that, it's all funded by the drugs companies. But what I am very interested in now is the microbiome and how that is going to change medicine and the way medicine thinks in the next decade or so, because that's where everything comes from, in here. So that's it. Oh, one more, if I may. Constipation. Constipation. I do hot stone reflexology as well, which I learned from Sue, who's here all the way from Leicester. But I had a lady who suffers from lupus, and I don't do hot stones on her because the hot stones actually create sort of hot flushes and things on her, which is not a good idea. But anyway, one day I was going over her colon reflex in her feet, and I asked her, "Are you a bit constipated?" "Oh yes," she said. "I haven't been for about 4 days." So I said, I'm just going to do, at the end of the treatment, I'm just going to do a hot stone colon flush, and we'll see what happens. So I did, and off she went home. Within half an hour, I received a text saying, "Ooh, those stones really work." So, over to you.
I'm going to take you back in mists of time to 1994 when I qualified in massage. And at the time I was working in London's financial markets, which was very dog-eat-dog world, very selfish, money orientated. I wanted to learn something that would keep my feet on the ground. So I decided to learn massage, and I'm really pleased that I did. The school where I qualified had very close links with Whipps Cross Hospital, and as a graduate I was asked if I would get involved with an outreach project which took massage into the homes of disabled young people with physical and mental disabilities in their homes. So I stuck my hand up and said yes, I'd love to, and off I trotted. Right. So off I trotted, and I met Rosie, who was 17, and her mum, Kate, at their home in Walthamstow. Rosie had very, very severe disabilities, and she couldn't do anything for herself: eat, feed, sleep, without assistance from medication. And her father was also disabled with ankylosing spondylitis, which is a very, very disabling back condition, so he wasn't working, and mum was a carer for him and her daughter. And she was absolutely devoted to Rosie, and she had to fight the system all the way to get what she needed for her daughter. So she was very stressed and tired, and I'm sure that there are carers here today who can empathise with some of the things that she was going through. So I started to work with Rosie, and initially she had a lot of spasms and her fingers were curled up like this. She also had constipation from the amount of medication she was on. So I started to introduce hand massage and a very gentle stomach massage. And it took some time, it's not a quick fix, but over time her fingers from being like this were much more mobile and were more relaxed, like so. And her mum reported that she had much better bowel function. As I continued to work on Rosie, I realised that actually mum, Kate, needed some help as well. She was on medication for very severe backache and constant headaches. So I started to introduce a little bit of massage for mum as well, which helped her. And with her GP's agreement, she was able to reduce some of the medication she was on. Then I had a bit of a brainwave, because the one thing that mum felt was that she'd given up control of her daughter to the men in white coats and social services, and she'd lost control. So I had a bit of a brainwave, it happens occasionally, and I taught her to massage her daughter's hands, and also how to do a very gentle stomach massage. And she loved it, because she was back in control. She could do something positive for her daughter, which she hadn't been able to do before. Eventually the funding for the project ran out, as is often the case, but I carried on my links with the family, and I saw her for years after that project had finished. Sadly, Rosie died at 23 years old, and it makes me quite emotional to think about it actually, but she taught me so much. And from her, I got my love of volunteering and caring for people in the community, and I'm passionate about that today as well, in my new role as Town Councillor. So I'm hoping to effect some change. As a result of that, there are two key learning points that I'd like to give people here today. Number one is for therapists. Yes, therapies can work really well with conventional medicine, but as John's already touched on, the most important thing you can do is give your time, because our medics don't have that luxury. And for the carers here today, you often put yourself second. The person you're caring for comes first, but you're important too. You may well view massage or any other complementary therapy as a luxury. It isn't. I would say that for you, it's an absolute necessity. Thank you.
So yes, just wanted to share a few stories from different clients as well. So I spoke at the beginning about how some of the work I do is oral, it's consultation, but I also do a lot of therapeutic treatments. I had a client very recently who most nights she was waking up with nightmares. For 6 years she was waking up feeling like someone was grabbing her round her throat. She sought obviously medical assistance with it, no one had really been able to get there with anything for her. And in Ayurveda we have this specific therapy called Mama therapy, where we just use our hands, and there's a little bit of talking that goes on, and so I just worked gently on her throat for no more than 10 minutes, and then she went away and she came back 3 weeks later and she jumped through the door full of excitement, because she said I'd worked my magic, and that was it. No more nightmares, no more waking up in the middle of the night feeling like she was being choked. And what's quite interesting is, again with reflexology, yes, there's this idea that some of it's magic, but then there's another side of it that isn't actually magic, and through a lot of the new science, the new research that's coming through, we're beginning to get little bits of understanding as to how these different therapies work, which I myself, being a bit of a geek, find really, really fascinating. Another client, she was 16 years, she'd been suffering with insomnia. Again, heavily medicated for this. It wasn't, bless her, really doing anything for her. In this particular case, I asked her, was there a particular area that she felt was somehow connected with when she goes to sleep? Is there something that kind of goes through her mind that she could trace to a point in her body? And she chose somewhere about here. So again, I worked on that. And all kinds of extraordinary things came out in her speech as I was working. And we realised that actually there was quite a strong connection to some challenges that she'd had with her children. Anyway, again, great story. She texted me 2 days later going, "You're not going to believe this, but that's 2 nights now, no medication, perfect sleep," and it's been the same since. Another client, so we could carry on all day, but another client, chronic fatigue, see quite a lot of chronic fatigue, and chronic fatigue can be really, really challenging to treat, and particularly for GPs to have different methods for dealing with it. It's not always so straightforward. They can be very complex cases. I had a lady who she became ill after a virus in 1998, and when she came to see me, she couldn't even go downstairs to make a meal. Every single meal was being brought up to her. She would maybe, if she was lucky, go downstairs once a day, and had been living like that for, I don't know, sort of 15 years or something, probably, when I saw her. And then just with regular Ayurveda, so there's kind of different parts of Ayurveda, but with sort of the more standard Ayurveda, by the time I'd seen her for a few months, just made a few adjustments, she was particularly using some herbs. She was already back downstairs, able to make some food again. And then with a more longer term programme that then took a year, by the end of that year, she was then bouncing around with her grandchild, caring for her grandchild again. And things like this, I don't. It's quite interesting for me to be standing here talking about this because it's the kind of thing that I just kind of get on, do my work, don't necessarily talk about it very much, which is probably the case with many of you here in this room today. But then when you stand there and you reflect on it, it's incredibly humbling, and this idea of education, of needing to. It's all very well and good saying, oh, here's the money, go out there, go and choose your treatment. You might be drawn to a certain treatment, but if there is something that could guide you and educate you as to what services are available out there, I think that is quite critical.
Thank you very much. It's amazing, isn't it, what therapists can do? That's just a taste, and some of you know, and I think some of you that aren't used to therapy would be surprised. It was just that bringing out about the NHS. Didn't they go over to India to find out about Ayurveda recently?
Yes, it's quite, there's a lot going on in the world of Ayurveda generally at the minute. With there's a big connection with the India High Commissioning Group, and some of the NHS have been out there to see, because in India, obviously the British took modern medicine, conventional medicine out there, and but aside from that, Ayurveda and Unani and naturopathy and other systems, traditional health systems, really continue to flourish, and because of this very holistic approach, and really what we're doing is educating people. When people come through the door, it's really about giving them the tools. I don't want clients for life. There are too many people to see. The less time people can be requiring my services or Ayurvedic services, the better. It's about educating so that people know how to help themselves. And that's really, I think, why some of the interest in going out there is to see the system of how to...
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? They go away over there. We're here! Yeah,
it's good.
That's good. You wanted to finish off with... sorry.
Yes, I'd like you just all to have a reward from this giving up your Saturday morning. And that is, I want to teach you a hand move, because you can do reflexology on your hands, and therefore you can do it on yourself. Now, lots of people are stressed. Who's stressed? Who's got stress? Yeah, lots of stress. I bet you have too. Yeah. All right then. So, on the hand, on each hand, you've got a diaphragm reflexology line just across below the knuckles on both hands. Now, you all know that your diaphragm is across here, and in the middle is the solar plexus. Now, if you get punched in the solar plexus, you lose your breath, and you get. But when you get stressed, your diaphragm gets tightened up, and your breathing becomes tighter, and you get a bit short of breath, hyperventilating, or whatever. And that then starts the heart racing because it's working too hard to get the oxygen. Now, this is a move that I can show you, and please show it to everybody that you meet, because stress is the big enemy, isn't it, really? Everybody that you meet. If you hold up your right hand like that, and your left hand like that, with the thumb sticking out, like that. Okay, now put your thumb on the point below your longest finger on the knuckle. That is the solar plexus reflex point for that hand. Now you swivel your right hand around gently so that you can get a finger onto the same point on the other hand. So you're just touching those 2 points. You can't get 2 thumbs connecting, it won't work. Okay? So finger and thumb like that. Okay? Like that. Now you can do this anywhere, you don't have to sit with your arms up. Just relax your hands, keep that connection, hold them in your lap. Now close your eyes and take some deep breaths. That is wonderful. There are so many pairs of shoulders that have dropped by at least an inch. Now you can do this anywhere. You can do it in front of your screen if you're at work. You can do it in the car if you're sitting at traffic lights and you're worried about getting to an appointment. Anywhere. Take yourself off mentally for a couple of minutes and do that, and you will really control your stress levels. And I'm seeing someone this afternoon who's rung up 15-year-old daughter, stressed about GCSEs, and he's bringing her this afternoon, and I'm going to teach her that very thing. I've taught it to hundreds of people, going to interviews and exams, driving tests, all that sort of thing, and it really works. But you've got to remember to do it when you get stressed.
Great, thank you.
Okay?